Good morning and welcome to the Liberty Day Institute's Visiting Scholars Program. My name is Jimmy Sangenberger and I'm the president of the Liberty Day Institute. We were founded in 1996, dedicated to educating youth on the U.S. Constitution and American government. Our purpose is to make sure that materials and resources get put into the hands of students, especially fifth graders, to educate them on our nation's founding documents. This morning, we will be talking momentarily with Colorado Attorney General Cynthia Coffman, who's graciously joining us this morning to take some time to talk about the Bill of Rights. Today is Bill of Rights Day, which is the 224th anniversary of the ratification of the Bill of Rights. It is just a wonderful thing to be able to celebrate the liberties and freedoms that we so often take for granted in this country, and it is remarkable to see how our nation has stood the test of time consistently for over 220 years, despite all sorts of trials and tribulations. It is truly breathtaking. So this is our Visiting Scholars Program. It is one of many editions where we interview experts on the U.S. Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence, our American government system, and other things related to that. So we're just going to wait a few minutes here while folks come online, and I'll talk to you a little bit more about what we do at Liberty Day Institute later on in this program in the course of our conversations on the Bill of Rights. While we're waiting, I do want to bring on our Attorney General, Cynthia Coffman, and say Happy Bill of Rights Day to you.
Thank you, Jimmy. The same to you.
I really appreciate you joining us today, and we will get started with the questions in just a couple of minutes here. But in the meantime, I want to ask you this question, which is, why are you doing this? Why are you here today with us?
You know, I think Liberty Day is a great organization. I've been excited to be involved with it for the last few years because to me, there's nothing more important about civic education for students in Colorado than learning about our foundational documents in our country and not just memorizing them, but understanding what each word means. That's what I think is so great about this and why I wanted to be a part of celebrating Bill of Rights Day with you.
Wonderful. Well, appreciate you joining us, Attorney General Cynthia Coffman, here on Liberty Day Institute's Visiting Scholars Program. We will start with the questions in just a minute here, so stay with us. Don't go anywhere. It is Liberty Day Institute's Visiting Scholars Program. Attorney General Coffman, what do you think about snow? Are you a fan of the snow?
You know, I love looking out the window of my office at it, and I can see the city and county of building all lit up for the holidays, but getting out and tromping in it and driving a car is not my favorite thing.
I'm right there with you. It's not my favorite thing either. You know what? I think we should go ahead and get started because we are definitely limited on time to about a half an hour with you. Attorney General Cynthia Coffman is our guest on today's edition of our Visiting Scholars Program, sponsored by the Liberty Day Institute. My name is Jimmy Sangenberger, and I'm president of the Liberty Day Institute. It is a real pleasure and a privilege to be with you on this Bill of Rights Day. One more time, Attorney General Cynthia Coffman, happy Bill of Rights Day. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
It's a pleasure.
So I want to ask you questions that we have from students on the Bill of Rights and the United States Constitution. And it really boils down to a number of different questions that are focused on what the Constitution is, what the Bill of Rights are, and why we have our system set up the way that we do. And so the first question, I think, is a very basic one, but it's an important foundational question. And that is, what is the U.S. Constitution, for starters?
Mm-hmm. Well, the Constitution is the supreme law of the United States. It's the source of all government power, and it provides limitations on our government that protect the fundamental rights of U.S. citizens. So in a way, it's a contract between us as citizens and our government.
Now, when you say contract, what do you mean by that?
Well, it includes mutual promises. The government is telling us that they will do certain things for us, and then we are saying as citizens that we will respect the laws and follow them.
Wonderful. So along those lines, why is the Constitution important?
You know, there are a lot of reasons. And in fact, I wrote some of them down if I can share with you what I think is really important. This will be one of my longer answers, so don't worry. Some of them are very short.
Go ahead.
But the Constitution, I think, is important because it creates enough power to act on the national level, but without so much power in our federal government that the fundamental rights of the people are going to be at risk. And that is the beauty of the document that the Founding Fathers created. So there are 6 principles that are deeply ingrained in the mindset and in the landscape of US government. And just real quickly, Jimmy, because I think this frames the rest of our conversation for our listeners, the first is popular sovereignty, and that is the source of government power lying with the people. Such an important principle of our United States government. The second is limited government. So our government is limited by the powers that the people give it. The government doesn't derive power from itself. Third is the separation of powers. We're going to talk about that some more, I think, in a few minutes. But the US government's divided into 3 branches so that no one branch has all of the power. And each branch has its own purpose: to make the laws, to execute the laws, and to interpret them. 3 more, checks and balances. I think we're also going to talk about this. But to protect the citizens of the United States, the Constitution sets up a system of checks and balances so that no one branch of government can become more powerful and dominate the other. Judicial review is a 5th really important principle in the Constitution. That's the power that allows the United States Supreme Court to decide when acts and laws are constitutional or unconstitutional. And finally, federalism. I think one of the most difficult principles to understand, but one of the most important. And that's the idea that our central government doesn't control all the power in the nation, that states have powers reserved to them, and so do the people.
We are sharing questions with Attorney General Cynthia Coffman that are provided by students, and we appreciate the time that you are taking to answer these questions. The next one specifically relates to the Bill of Rights, which is what we're celebrating today on this Bill of Rights Day. And that is, why did the Founding Fathers make the Bill of Rights separate as amendments to the Constitution instead of including them in the original Constitution?
You know, I studied this a bit, and I found out some interesting things, Jimmy, that you may already know. But toward the end of the Constitutional Convention in 1787, it was George Mason of Virginia, the delegate representing Virginia, who suggested having a Bill of Rights as part of the draft document, the Constitution. And he felt that there were not enough individual liberties and protections in the original document. But when he suggested it, some of the other state delegates said no, they took a pass on it. And we think it may just be because they were tired. They had been meeting for 4 months in a hot, stuffy room in the summer. And I think they were tired of each other and they were ready to go home. So they said, we don't need a Bill of Rights right now. Well, it turned out that when we were going through the ratification process of the Constitution, there were a few states that objected to the document because it didn't spell out individual guarantees of freedoms. And in order to pass the Constitution, the founders said, we will include a Bill of Rights and we'll begin working on that document. So as often happens in government, it was part of a compromise to get something accomplished, and that was to have a constitution for these United States.
Most certainly one of the most significant compromises in American history, that's for sure. Now, one question that relates directly to your job as Attorney General for Colorado, which we will talk about in just a little bit here on our Visiting Scholars Program, Attorney General Coffman, is this. It's about the role of the states. I think it's an excellent question. Do the states need to honor the Bill of Rights, especially those that deal with criminal investigations and cases, and the ones that deal with freedom? Or does the Bill of Rights only apply to the federal government and their actions?
You know, the Bill of Rights applies to us all because Colorado in its constitution has its own Bill of Rights. and so do other states. So I brought a copy of it with me. Probably nobody can see this, but this is the big book. This is our statutes. The Colorado Constitution is part of those, and it guarantees very similar rights as the United States Constitution does. So freedom of press and religion and speech are in the Colorado Bill of Rights. So are the guarantees to people who are accused of a crime. So things like a speedy trial, the right not to be subjected to unreasonable searches and seizures, the ability to confront witnesses against oneself in a criminal case. Those are all part of our Colorado Constitution and the rights that are guaranteed to us. And there are 33 separate guarantees in the Colorado Bill of Rights.
That's interesting. So 33 as opposed to 10, although there are more guarantees than just 10 because there are different components to each of the amendments to the Constitution that were in the Bill of Rights, that constitute the Bill of Rights. Once again, we are talking with Colorado Attorney General Cynthia Coffman. You know, you mentioned this before, which was what checks and balances are as a component to the Constitution. But what exactly are checks and balances, and why do we have them in the Constitution?
You know, they're a really important part of the document, and they keep government honest. So we have three branches: the legislative, the executive, and the judicial. And checks and balances are put in place so that each branch can sort of check the power of another one. If they start to get a little bit too assertive. And so some of the examples that I think help illustrate this, Jimmy, are the fact that Congress, the legislative branch, has the power to the purse strings, to the finances of the country. So they fund executive actions, and sometimes they don't fund things, as we've seen with unpopular wars. The Congress may decide that they don't want to fund a particular action. Another example is that our U.S. Senate approves presidential appointments, and that includes appointments to the United States Supreme Court. And that's an important check on the judicial branch. The president in the executive branch can veto bills that Congress sends to him for signature. And then sometimes Congress will override the president's veto, and that's another sort of check and balance on the executive branch. And finally, the courts in the judicial branch can decide that a law that the legislature passes is unconstitutional. So it's simply a way of balancing power among these three branches of government. And it is fundamental to what the United States is and why our government works well.
I think that's an excellent explanation, Attorney General Cynthia Coffman. Yes, here on Liberty Day Institute's Visiting Scholars Program. Now, the Constitution is a broad document in the sense that there are 7 different articles to it. And there are, of course, the Bill of Rights and 17 additional amendments to the Constitution followed the Bill of Rights. So in your mind, Attorney General Coffman, what is the most important aspect to the Constitution, in your opinion, or important part of the Constitution to you?
You know, this might come as a surprise. I don't know, but I would say the preamble. And that's because it tells the story right up front of why we have a Constitution. And it establishes the power of the people to create government and that will govern our country. So I bet you, everybody listening today, has memorized the preamble to the United States Constitution. I know I did, and I was thinking, I believe I did it in 5th grade. I'm not positive, but it seems like that's when it was, in 5th grade government class. And I still remember it, and I can say it, just like our Colorado students can. It is a reminder to all of us of how fortunate we are to live in this country and to have a government that is of, by, and for the people.
Now, we talk about being a free country, and this is a very interesting and I think good question, as all of these are good questions from our students that are participating in this. And that is, if we live in a free country, then why are there age limits for things like voting, driving, drinking, smoking, playing the lottery, and things like that?
That is a great question. The government's first role is to protect public safety. And we have decided as a society that certain activities are age appropriate for adults, but they present a public safety risk to those who are underage. And I can almost hear kids groaning when I say that. But it's the thought that with age comes responsibility. And a good example of that is voting. We get our right to vote when we complete our high school education. And it's also attached to the fact that we can go to war. We can be a part of the military, defending our country at age 18. And that's when we earn the right to vote. So that's a good example of when a right is earned. And some of those you mentioned definitely fall in that category. So everybody just needs to hold on, count the days when driving and drinking and smoking and doing all those fun things. It can happen. Everything in moderation, though. The Attorney General wants you to be careful.
Yes, absolutely. And make sure that you're following the law, of course. And it is very important to do that and to follow through with the law and those legal ramifications that could happen. Definitely, there are consequences to your actions. So keep that in mind, to be sure. Now, something else that's a part of the Constitution is there are amendments to it that deal with freedom and protections for our rights. What's interesting is that there's been a significant debate over things like an equal rights amendment for women. This is an interesting question from a student, which is, why was the Equal Rights for Women amendment defeated?
And I remember when this happened because I was a big proponent of the Equal Rights Amendment when I was growing up. I think it probably is because the people who opposed the Equal Rights Amendment actually put out a lot of erroneous information about what it would do. And they said that there would be significant undesirable changes for American women if the law passed. And that included things like the loss of protective laws on sexual assault, the right to alimony if there was a divorce case. Others argued that there were adequate laws protecting women and that no more were necessary. That in fact, it wasn't right to have laws protecting women. We should also have laws protecting men. It was a hot debate. And by the way, even though the Equal Rights Amendment didn't pass and become part of the federal Constitution, the Colorado Constitution has an equality of sexes provision that says there won't be any discrimination on account of sex. So we have that in our state constitution.
Once again, we are talking with Attorney General Cynthia Coffman. Now, we know all about the federal government, the three branches of government. The legislative branch is the United States Congress. Your husband happens to be Congressman Mike Coffman, serving the 6th Congressional District of Colorado. We've got the President of the United States, who heads up the executive branch, and the United States Supreme Court. Well, when we look at the state government, it's divided into a number of different parts. It's got 3 branches of government, but in the executive branch, instead of just having a president who then appoints a cabinet that is confirmed by the United States Senate, we have 3 different officials that serve along with the governor, and that is our Secretary of State, our State Treasurer, and our Attorney General, who, of course, is our guest, Cynthia Coffman. Attorney General Coffman, what is your role in the government as Attorney General? What do you do?
Well, I appreciate your explanation for folks of how state government is a little different than the way we have structured the United States government. We have in the state of Colorado what's considered a plural executive. So in some ways, we provide our own checks and balances on each other within the executive branch. The governor, the attorney general, the secretary of state, and the treasurer. We each have our roles to play in state government. Mine is to be the people's attorney, to represent the state of Colorado and defend the state constitution and the laws that are passed by our Colorado General Assembly. So I am the head of an office full of attorneys here in downtown Denver, 280 in the year 2015, 280 lawyers doing the work of the state. And we represent all of the state agencies and the statewide elected officials in court. I also have an independent duty as a separately elected constitutional officer to defend the people and represent the interests of the people of the state of Colorado. So I wear two hats, really. I represent the state government, but I also represent the people of the state.
Now, obviously, you were elected to the position of Attorney General, but you have to make the decision to become an Attorney General in the first place. So why did you choose to take on that position?
You know, I have been a lawyer for 25 years now, Jimmy. I love being an attorney, and this to me is sort of the ultimate lawyer job, representing the state of Colorado, a place that I dearly love. The issues are so interesting, and I get to actually practice constitutional law. When I was in law school, I took not only a course in constitutional law, but one on the First Amendment. We spent a whole semester studying the rights in the First Amendment. And then we had an evidence course that talked about criminal law and the rights that are guaranteed in the Constitution. And not many that attorneys actually get to practice that type of law every day. But as a representative of the state, I get to do that. And it's a pretty awesome responsibility, something I really enjoy doing. And I am honored and privileged that the people of the state of Colorado elected me to be their Attorney General.
Now, you kind of touched on this point when you were talking about what your role in government is, but this is another student question that's curious to know what you do on a daily basis. What's your day look like?
They're all different. And I make to-do lists, and usually my day doesn't resemble what's on my to-do list. But in addition to practicing law and working out the strategy of legal cases that we do here in the Attorney General's office, I have what I call ceremonial duties, Jimmy. So I make speeches, I go to events and represent the state. And am present to be there so that people know that their event is endorsed by the Attorney General and the state. And I have political responsibilities. Those are actually part of my daily activity too, going to lunches and dinners and all sorts of events. So eating is actually a big part of my job. In addition to representing the people on a daily basis and working out all of the cases that we have going at any given time.
Once again, we're talking with Colorado Attorney General Cynthia Coffman. You know, we talk about the rights that we have as Americans and as Coloradans, and how they're protected by our Constitution and by the Bill of Rights as a part of the Constitution. But we also have the responsibility to exercise those rights responsibly, which leads to another good question, which is, what is good citizenship?
I like that. Good citizenship starts to me with exactly what we're doing, which is learning about the laws that are the foundation of our government. It is taking responsibility for your actions. It is taking an interest in your community, and that may be your school community and your friends. We have a program here in the Attorney General's office that I bet a lot of your student listeners have heard about, and that's called Safe to Tell. Safe to Tell is a way for students in Colorado to anonymously report concerns to their safety or threats to them or their friends. It's a great example of citizenship in the school community because it's an opportunity for students to take responsibility and care for their classmates and for their school environment. And it teaches those fundamental responsibilities that we all have that carry forward into adulthood, to study the laws, to follow them, to be an active part of our society, and to care about the people around us.
You tied in something that I think is very important for all Americans, but especially to the Liberty Day Institute, because we are all about educating young people on our nation's founding documents. So for those students who are viewing this program, why is it important in your mind, Attorney General Coffman, to study and learn about the Bill of Rights and the U.S. Constitution?
You know, these are the fundamental documents of a free society. They're the things that make the United States unique, that make being citizens of the United States of America, whether we were born here or we came here and became citizens and went through that process, as active citizens and people who care about our country, we should know the history. We should know why laws were made a certain way. And then we should be a part of protecting what we have, because we can't take it for granted.
That's so important. I think that all too often we take for granted these rights and freedoms that we have without acknowledging how important it is to know exactly what they are and why they are important. Another question here, Attorney General Coffman, is with all the rights that we have, how can we be assured that we are all guaranteed the same rights?
Well, you know, we can't be sure. And that's why we have to be vigilant and we have to be active in participating in our government. We need to vote. We need to stand up for our freedoms. And that is something that I have seen shift over the course of my lifetime. Or maybe it's just that I've gotten older and wiser, Jimmy. But I've come to understand that we each have to take an active role in our government. If we want it to be there to protect us and to defend our rights, we need to talk to our legislators about laws that we think are important or ones that we think shouldn't be passed. Sometimes there are laws that are not a good idea. We need to challenge things that we see that are wrong, that are unjust. And that is not just something that we do as adults. That's something that we begin to do when we are in school, when we start becoming part of a community and we have our own society in our schools. It's a great place to learn how the world functions. And we tend to think, I think, when we're students in school, that we're learning just one particular subject. We're learning English literature, we're learning Spanish, we're learning algebra. But all at the same time, integrated in our classes, and our teachers know this, are the fundamentals, the things that our teachers teach our students about how we're going to be responsible adults, how we're going to become part of perhaps the government that protects society, and if not part of the government, then members of a community where we are active and where we make our own lives what we want them to be. That's the beauty of being in the United States. We create what we have, and we have ownership over that.
I love that term, ownership over the things that we create as a people and the freedoms that we have. When you talked about responsibility, Attorney General Coffman, that really goes to our questions about good citizenship and also how there are limits on certain things when we live in a free country, age limits, for example, and other things that protect our individual rights as Americans. My final question for you before we let you go, Attorney General Coffman, as we know you have much to do on this busy and snowy day, is why you are here. What is it about Bill of Rights Day that gets you so fired up to participate in an educational program such as what Liberty Day Institute is doing?
Well, I think it can be easy for us as Americans to take for granted all that we have. And these days, folks are very critical. Let's look at the presidential campaign as an example. I won't talk too much politics, but it's the presidential campaign, the debates that the candidates have, we hope are about the fundamentals of our country and of our society and what each candidate wants to see, what their vision is for the United States of America. But it can become really a critical exercise where people are directing comments at each other and they become personal. I think one of the things that our students here in Colorado know as participants in the Liberty Day Institute is that that bigger picture about our country and our vision is what is really important. And it's not the small things, it's not the petty things, it's not what someone's hair looks like or how they may happen to express themselves in a particular sentence or on a particular topic. This really, in the education that we're receiving through the Liberty Day Institute, will ground us as citizens for the rest of our lives. And so it's an extremely important thing that you all are doing and that our students are doing, participating today in celebrating Bill of Rights Day. I'm so proud to have been a part of it. And you talked about how do we guarantee that we'll always have rights that are in the Constitution. Well, it's up to each of us and each person who's listening to our conversation to take that responsibility and that ownership and make sure that it happens. That's what you're bringing to people and why I wanted to be a part of the conversation today. So thank you.
And thank you for taking the time to do this. I think that was wonderfully put, and we really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you, Attorney General Coffman, about these important issues on this Bill of Rights Day. So thank you so much for taking the time to participate. We look forward to working with you more down the line in these exciting events that we do at the Liberty Day Institute, and appreciate your time today. I want to wish you a happy Bill of Rights Day.
Thank you so much, and the same to you.
All right. Thank you so much, Attorney General Cynthia Coffman here on Liberty Day Institute's Visiting Scholars Program. And thank you for watching on this snowy Colorado day. Happy Bill of Rights Day.